They came like a bolt out of the blue to discuss everything in geekdom. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the attack of the 50-foot nerds.
Hey there, nerds and geeks. This is Paul Griggs, your resident third nerd, and welcome to this special presentation of the fan panel that I moderated at the Gallifrey One convention. It's called Beyond a Joke. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. Firstly, we've edited the recording to keep any copyright infringing audio to an absolute minimum. And secondly, you'll find the sound quality a little variable compared to the main show recorded at Geek Retreat. But you'll definitely be able to hear everything being said and get a flavour of the discussion. So, without further ado, let me hand over to, me in Los Angeles. Good morning, Paul. Good morning, Gallifrey One.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
All right, welcome.
We have an audience. My name is Paul Griggs, and I am moderating this panel, which is Beyond a Joke, Doctor Who parodies. I am from the Attack of the 50-Foot Nerds podcast, which is a pop culture and comedy podcast. We record live each month in front of a live audience. Joining me on this panel are...
Hi everyone, my name is Nick Seidler, and I am the person who helps run the Earthbound Time Lords Doctor Who site, which is the academic Doctor Who site online. It's home of the scripts page, it's home to the Diary of Doctor Who role-playing games fanzine, and it's also part of the fanzine preservation project for Doctor Who. So that's a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm Dan Murphy, been a Doctor Who fan since 1980, and I run absolutely nothing.
But he's...
Except for the Saturday Night Dance!
Yeah, woo!
Are you ready to disco?
Well, you certainly sound like you should be a DJ.
Why, thank you very much.
So, as long as there has been Doctor Who virtually, there has been Doctor Who comedy.
Yes.
I mean, less than, a month after the series aired, we had a sketch on It's a Square World, starring Clive Dunn, of all people, a potential doctor, as a parody of William Hartnell's Doctor, and it's never stopped. Comedy sketches, stand-up comedians are always talking about Doctor Who, radio comedy, TV comedy, films. Fan films, which we will certainly be getting to. Fan comedy in written and drawn form. What do you guys immediately think of when we think of Doctor Who and comedy?
Well, I'll just start, and I think we all have different ideas, and I'm sure everybody in the audience has different ideas too. I think most of us love seeing when Doctor Who kind of maybe gets sent up a little bit, when we see it like on a TV show or when it gets mentioned in another piece of media that we like. So I think that's one of the things we kind of look for. I think we all love just seeing Doctor Who get name dropped. One of the things that I really enjoy are fan films, and that's when fans make their own videos about and connected to Doctor Who. And I think that's one of the things that appeals to me, which I like to watch. So what about you?
I know quite a few of those fan films. A lot of them, one of them started up in Seattle with Ryan K. Johnson, and his fan films involved a female incarnation of the Doctor, and he did this in the 1980s.
Yes.
And he did a whole series of Doctor Who fan films.
The late great Barbara Benedetti.
Exactly, yes. Then you've got the Federation up in Chicago.
Yeah.
They've done their series of fan films. So, yeah, those have been great. And naturally, you get these comedy sketches on a variety of British TV series, one of them being Lenny Henry.
Yes. Those of you who got to see The Curse of Fatal Death when it was released on VHS tape, they included that as a little sort of bonus extra. Otherwise, outside the UK, you probably wouldn't have seen that. So... Lenny's Seventh Doctor versus Thachos and Denos, the Cybermen. Definitely remember that. I mean, the next stage on from fan films with a sort of semi-professional production. So the Doctor Who Appreciation Society did a film called The Few Doctors. which was a spoof of Doctor Who, but also a spoof of
Oh, hello.
We have another person joining us. Yay. Round of applause for our late arrival.
Wow, those elevators, let me tell you.
Introduce yourself, my friend.
Hi, I'm Andy Hicks, and that doesn't really matter right now because I was just in the elevator that I waited for about 10 minutes. I'm so sorry. But you know what? Who else was in the elevator was Colin Baker and Sophie Aldred and Jan Felix. That was How do you, I'm there and I'm trying to, I'm freaking out at this panel. I go in there, there's all the TV people, and I'm like, I just play cool, don't say anything. I can't respond to that because it's like there's going from place to place. I don't want to interrupt them, but what do you do?
I know, it sounds like my flight over because I was on the same plane as Bonnie, Katie, and it seemed like half of the Big Finish people.
Exactly.
But so we've just been talking about what we think of when we think of comedy, and I was just mentioning the semi-professional video. So we've got the Dwas that did The Few Doctors. And then the first time I came to Gallifrey One was in 2001. So this was at the Airtel Plaza in Van Nuys. And I was here because I was working for a little company that some of you may have heard of called BBV.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And we'd literally just done this thing, which is called Do You Have a License to Save This Planet? Yes, for those for the little ones in the audience, this is called a videotape. It's what we had before DVDs and Blu-rays, and it takes up, about 10 times as much space for about, 10% of the storage volume. But yes, so a spoof of what we did with the BBV semi-pro, licensed stuff, and also our sort of slightly less licensed stuff, if you like. Hence the title, Do You Have a License to Save This Planet? Starring Sylvester McCoy as the chiropodist. That's the foot doctor. But so there's been a lot of. So what do you think of when you immediately think of Doctor Who comedy?
The show itself, because it's hilarious quite often, intentionally, most of the time. I think it's the other thing that's come to mind. I think it's just because I think in chronological order a lot of the time, which is really annoying because I'd love to be like, here's the thing that means the most to me. But what comes to mind are all the collected Doctor Who comedy specials that I saw on the Curse of Fatal Death,
We've
VHS,
literally
right?
just talked about that. Yeah,
that's kind of what I think of. Curse of Fatal Death is perfect in that way. I love I'm one who loves the way that Moffat worked some of those ideas into the show, for real, subtly, here and there. It commenting on itself, but finding new venues from those paths.
Thing to remember about Stephen and the Curse of Fatal Death was, so this was the era when Doctor Who was gone.
Yeah.
It wasn't coming back, ever. And Stephen was well known as a comedy writer at that time. And, they've basically gone to him and said, do this thing. And it's like, this is going to be my only chance to do Doctor Who ever. Little did he know. And so that's what he's done. He's taken the best of both worlds. He's took the comedy, but it's a proper Doctor Who adventure. And the whole speech about why the Doctor shouldn't die because he's so funny and he's never cruel and never cowardly and this, that, and the other. You can absolutely see where he'd go later on, should he get the chance to be the showrunner. Funny that. So, Curse of Fatal Death is always a highlight.
Yeah, parody is so important. It's the most important art form. I have a YouTube channel, by the way, Sicker X Rock. I make Doctor Who parodies. It's very important. My work is important, guys. It's true.
Also interesting how prophetic Stephen Moffat was in 1999 for having the 13th incarnation as a female doctor.
Yep, with blonde hair, too. similar kind of look,
Yeah.
hairdo too.
If you could go back to 1990, it's like, you'll never believe this.
I know.
The thing I would say though is, and you tend to get this in a lot of Doctor Who comedy, is there are certain things that, I don't know, are kind of cheap shots.
Oh yeah.
You know, there are certain themes, there are certain jokes, and they were great when they were done for the first time. You know, that first time you saw a cartoon of a Dalek not being able to go upstairs and going, "Ow, bugger!" But you know what? We've been doing that gag for 60 years now, and it's good that the series has subverted that plenty of times now.
Any parody that uses the Daleks can't go upstairs that came out before November 1988, I am fine with.
Yeah.
Anything after that, it's like, what are you doing? Do your homework.
Yeah, but just the gags about the female Doctor, and it's like, oh look, I've got etheric beam locators, and the sonic screwdriver has got 3 settings.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I kind of cringe at those now. And I find that there is, I did a lot of research for this panel, watching back over, and I watched a sketch with Neil Innes from his show, The Innes Book of Records, where he did a comedy song called the UFO Shanty as the 4th Doctor, but in black and white minstrel blackface. Yeah, and I'm just sitting there and cringing the whole time.
Yes, but in the context of the time. Folks.
Yes, yeah. It's not acceptable now. It wasn't acceptable then, as Disney Plus always says.
It's like still bad now. It was actually worse then. They didn't know. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's oh god.
One thing that could also potentially be a cultural difference is in the U.S. Parody is protected under copyright law. So in the United States, we're allowed to do a lot more than I think you can in the UK.
That's true.
In terms of like how you can make fun of Doctor Who and things like that. So if there's fan films that decide to do a Doctor Who, video, that's actually okay under US copyright law. So one of the things that was really kind of funny was that in the 90s, there was actually a Doctor Who commercial stage play called Who's the Doctor that ran on stage in Chicago, and it actually ran for, I want to say, 12 showings. It ran for 12 showings, and they changed the story every time, and they changed some of the characters. And so it was an actual theater play that you could go to, and people would actually watch it, and it was 100% Doctor Who content, right? But it was sending up Doctor Who, and because we're in the United States, we can do that and not basically get in trouble for doing it, right? And so I'm encouraging everybody here to make your own parody Doctor Who content, okay? Is the first thing that I'm gonna say, right? But more so that a lot of the times people don't know about some of the things that happen, right? So you have a podcast with music and things like that, right? So like the Federation, which is still around, which you mentioned earlier, yeah, I actually give them a shout out, but they still did it's still Doctor Who to me, music video parody when Jodie Whittaker became the Doctor, right? She's one of our special guests here at the convention. So I bring that up because, it's almost like looking back in time, but we weren't entirely sure how well Jodie Whittaker would go over as the Doctor at the time, right? And so that kind of parody that people can do and that fans can do, I think is important to memorialize and also promote the show, just like your podcast, you guys, So.
Yeah, I think it's important that if you're going to make fun of something, do it with love. Because
Yeah, absolutely.
there's also humor that can be very mean, and that's not what this should be about.
Yeah, there's I've done a series of I haven't done one in a while, but there's a series a takeoff of the epic rap battles of history, which is the epic rap battles of Hoostery, and I've written all of them and performed almost all of them. One was very wonderfully done by a couple of my friends who are here, the Rose versus Ace one, which I'm really proud of the writing there. But again, this is you're coming from the perspective of what would this character / figure from the show think of this other character / figure from the show, right? It's not, here's necessarily my opinion. Here's opinions I've heard that would line up with their opinions. So I try to approach it like that, right? Anything that really is something that's me coming out would have come out through one of those characters anyway. And there's a few lines I'm thinking of in particular, but like, sort of the way that it goes is like I really have to not only know a lot about the show from a trivia standpoint, from a like I know what planet the pirate planet took place on, and I know how Ood is related to the Sensorites or whatever, which I do, which is really sad, but hi. You have to know all that stuff. You also have to know, like, okay, but what's the culture of the fandom? What arguments are kind of bad? What arguments are completely out there but sort of funny? Like, what arguments are people making? What points of view are people coming from? You can have to balance a lot of that. Take all that into account, and that takes love. There's nothing about that I need water so badly it's dry as hell in here. Does anyone have any water? My mouth has turned into a crocodile. Thank you so very much.
No, you...
What?
No.
I'm good at the moment, thank you. It looks like I'm the only person who came... Well, no, a couple of us came prepared, but...
Anybody? I see you, Brad.
If it's okay, let me mention one other type of parody that I think is worth noting. One of our guests that's here this weekend...
Very nice person. Thank you so much.
Yeah. One of our guests this weekend is Stacy Smith ?
Yes.
Who's an editor who edits the Outside In series of books.
Yes.
And the reason I want to bring that up is because she allows a number of different authors to write pieces about like Doctor Who, and also covers other TV shows. And so I also want to talk a little bit about making sure that like people realize that there are joke print books that are out there about Doctor Who, right? So for instance, the Outside In books are really good at getting different perspectives. Now, those can range from being very serious to being very funny and full of parody, but a lot of people tend to approach like their writing within those books as kind of fun and like, maybe a little bit tongue-in-cheek about the series. So I just, because we also have that person here, I kind of wanted to bring that up as like a book style of parody that also exists, kind of. So
Sure. The thing you're saying about needing to have a sort of a level of knowledge and then a fandom's love means that you can kind of spot when you're watching professional comedy, the professionals who are also fans, as opposed to the professionals who are just doing a lazy Dalek can't go upstairs gag.
Yeah.
So, for example, guest here this weekend, John Culshaw, very well known for Dead Ringers, both on BBC radio and television in the UK. His Fourth Doctor parodies, the highlight of comedy, regardless of whether it's to do with Doctor Who or not, is John Culshaw's Fourth Doctor ringing Tom Baker on the phone.
Yes.
Yes, that's a great one.
It's utterly brilliant. But one of my favourites, there was a show on... So this was unusual for the time. BBC Radio 1 is primarily a pop music station, or at least was. But back in the 90s, they actually had a sketch comedy show called The Mary Whitehouse Experience.
Yes.
And primarily four guys, so it's David Baddiel, Robert Newman, Hugh Dennis, and Steve Punt. And I know for a fact that a couple of them are card-carrying fans, because there is a sketch, it's on the Doctor Who at the BBC CDs. Now, I'll explain about the sketch in a second, but the reason that it's important to me is that when I went to college, so this came out, around about the time I was 17, 18, my best mate at college, he'd literally taped this one episode, and we would play it over and over and over again in his car, to the point that we were literally quoting this sketch back and forth at each other. Yeah. But it's the Doctor Who monsters dispute of the early 1970s, where the Doctor Who monsters went on strike. I wrote myself a reminder here somewhere. Was it the Amalgamated Association of Evil Aliens Who All Speak Perfect English? Their leader, Mr. Bobby Davros, comes out of TUC headquarters and down the stairs. Mr. Davros, what do you feel about the pay offer? Frankly derisory. Negotiate. It is one of those. It's absolute with love for the show, and it's definitely written by somebody who knows the show really, really well. The union leader, Mr. Crondor. What do we want? 12%! When do we want it? Now!
You make a very important point about if you don't understand Doctor Who, the jokes don't work.
Exactly.
Right, and what I mean by that, if you don't have a love for the material while you write it, that's so important.
Yeah. Do you guys have an immediate one, a go-to, a favourite sketch, song, written material, anything that? They're all funny as.
They're all funny in their own aspects.
I'll go quick. I'm going to recommend the Federation, which is the Doctor Who club from Chicago. They did a fan film called Save Who, SAVEWHO. If you're an old-time fan who remembers PBS pledge breaks in America, definitely watch that fan video. It's great.
It's like from 85 or something.
Yeah, like 85.
It's
It is
classic.
truly classic Doctor Who parody. Yeah.
Yeah, and people that you've seen around fandom, like as old and wizened, men and women of the day, like they're your age in that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. God, I think someone else go. I have a few in mind.
You have a few.
Working on it.
Any in the audience?
We got some favourite.
You got to say Bull McCann.
Well,
So
yeah,
good,
okay,
so
yeah.
good.
So we mentioned it earlier. So parody songs. There are so many. I want to give a shout out to a guy that I got to a convention in Liverpool when I was part of the Merseyside local group. So this was just before the show came back in 2004. There's a parody songwriter in the UK by the name of Mitch Benn. He's a really, really funny stand-up comedian, but he's also a massive Doctor Who fan. He was a Merseyside local group member of long-standing back in the day. And the one that's so he was the regular funny songs guy on a show called The Now Show on BBC Radio 4 for many years, and I remember when just before Rose aired, he did a song which was called "Call Me During Doctor Who and I'll Kill You."
Yes.
That's literally the chorus. Call me during Doctor Who and I'll kill you. We kind of forget about. We're talking about America. We're talking about the UK. We kind of tend to forget about our Antipodean cousins. Have we got anybody from Australia or New Zealand in the audience today? That's a no. Fine. We can talk about them. So roundabout. So this would have been the silver anniversary, 1988. There was a band in Australia called Bulla Macanka. You can find a video of them on Australian television doing their song. It's the ballad.
Who's gonna fix it?
It's
Doctor
who's going to fix it?
Doctor Who is going to fix it. Doctor Who will get it right. Yeah, there's just something about it that only the Australians could do.
Yes.
Quite only a bunch of convict descendants could come up with a Doctor Who parody song like this. This is it. His trusty mate K9. Yeah. What a brilliant lyric. You have to. It is on YouTube.
If you search it on YouTube,
Yeah.
it comes up as the Ballad of Doctor Who, but the actual title of the song is Doctor Who's Gonna Fix It.
It's
As a parody songwriter, you search Sycorax Rock on YouTube. you search for the landing line that is simultaneously obvious yet surprising yet pure, and that is it.
Isn't it
And his
just?
trusty mate K9.
The song was released in 1983.
Right.
Wow, I thought it was later than that
Yeah.
because when
They
they were on
repressed
the.
it. They put it on 45 RPM vinyl again. They did a repress.
That'll be it.
Yeah.
That'll be it.
Speaking of Doctor Who comedy and music, back early 2000s, there was a compilation CD released called Who is Doctor Who?
Yeah.
And it compiled a whole bunch of recordings, including one of the first Doctor Who related recordings. I'm gonna spend my Christmas with a Dalek. By the Go-Go's.
I've got to say this. I am obsessed with Christmas music, right? Yeah. When December, my son Joshua is in the audience. He knows this very well, and so do most of my friends. So basically, December 1st rolls around. I wipe my iPod and put nothing but Christmas music on it. I put 15,000 tracks onto that iPod just for December, and because I just put it on loop, and I don't get through more than, say, 3,000 in the year, and I don't listen to a single song twice. But yes, Doctor Who. I want to spend my Christmas with a Dalek is definitely a go-to Christmas hit for me. It's awesome. But also on that CD, it's a brilliant one if you can still find it. And I'm sure it's all the songs are on Tinternet now and that. But Fraser Hines.
Yep.
Doing
Who's Doctor Who?
Who's Doctor Who? And I'm a time traveler, honey, and I can't get away from your love.
Yes. Yep.
Unreleased track. I have a cover of that I did for a compilation that actually was released, but it was like a charity thing, Who for Schools, a while back, that I will be posting on the channel soon because I love that version. I'm so proud.
Definitely, you should. You definitely should.
There's also a track recorded by John Pertwee, Who is the Doctor?
So good.
That gives lyrics to the Doctor Who theme, which is particularly fun.
I crossed the void beyond the mind.
Is this parody or self-parody? That's the question.
Yeah.
This is our panel, Randy. Okay.
What I do love, though, I mean, that's a really well-known one and really popular.
Yes.
Big Finish actually managed to get Tim Treloar to quote it in one of the Third Doctor adventures, and I'm just sat there listening to it, going, "That's genius."
Point counterpoint. Should you recast old Doctors? Should you not? However, that's why you do it.
Yeah.
That's why you do it.
Yeah.
If that's a different panel.
That's a different panel.
That's a different panel.
People, I think someone.
There's a question up front.
We got a question.
Less of a question, more of a comment in line, I think, with what you're saying. So when it comes to people making subtle references that are genius for people who know,
Yeah.
my two favorites are, one was a Phineas and Ferb thing, and they did a crossover with Marvel, but, the Ferb is this British stepson or stepbrother that got married in, who hardly ever says anything, but they go to Shed instead of Shield in their backyard. And it looks like this rundown wooden piece of crap, and then you open it and it's freaking huge. And someone says something about British engineering, and Tony Stark and all these Marvel people look at Ferb, and he's like, yeah, it's bigger on the inside. And that's
That's
all he says, but my children, we saw that, and my children
Yeah.
And the second one is Rick Riordan, who writes Percy Jackson and the Kane Chronicles and a bunch of different stuff. In the Kane Chronicles, which is based on Egyptian mythology and magic, Shabti, these little clay figurines that you make, is one of the big Egyptian things. And the sassy female of the two lead characters is not good at animating Shabti, but she doesn't want to do her house chores, so she animates a bunch of flower pots to do her house chores for her.
Flobba-dob.
And they fly, but she's not good at it, so instead of doing her house chores, he's like, there's just these little flower pots that are upside down, flying around their little house of magic, yelling, exterminate, exterminate.
Well,
That's all he says.
Of course.
And again, I read that, and my daughter freaked out. She's like, oh my god, that's so amazing!
Having the Daleks represented by something else is quite common. So, Rod Hull and Emu. Who here, outside of the people from Britain, know who Rod Hull and Emu were? Okay, not enough people that I don't need, I'll need to explain it. So, Rod Hull was a British entertainer who had a puppet. It wasn't even ventriloquism because this puppet was silent, and it was an emu. And basically, all this emu did was attack people. He'd go on a chat show and basically get into a fight with the interviewer. I mean, my wife always maintains that because of the era, it was just an excuse for Rod Hull to feel people up. But that's. He had a number of shows over the years on ITV and the BBC, and for a show they called Emu's Broadcasting Company, he did a Doctor Who parody, and it was versus the Deadly Dustbins. So they would upturn dustbins instead of Daleks, and what else? I mean, the whole pepper pot thing is quite obvious as well.
The British edition of Mad magazine had a Doctor Who parody in it, which I think is always worth mentioning, just because Mad was seen, especially in the 70s and the 80s, as sort of like the sort of tongue-in-cheek magazine that was great. And so I bring that up every now and then. You can come across that online and stuff. Mm-hmm. So
I think I want to really specifically, I kind of trailed off like stuff on the Curse of Fatal Death VHS, but I really specifically want to just mention the Lenny Henry one is so good, and
Isn't
that's
it?
the one where you can tell that's a fan. You can tell that's someone who, because you could do the obvious I'm just doing a Tom Baker, because everyone remembers Tom, even though Colin Baker is the Doctor now. He's doing Colin Baker like the exasperated, I wanted to do that. He keeps coming back, and it's like, and he's playing it just absolutely so straight, except when he lurches into those. But the timing is so wonderful. And the one thing I remember people pointing out is that when Thatcher
Fatchos and Denos.
The Thatcher Cyberman comes out, and the reaction's actually kind of muted, because by that point everyone's like, yeah, Thatcher's a Cyberman, you know that.
Yeah.
There's an audience question actually out there.
Yeah, sure.
Do you consider Inspector Spacetime on communities?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
To be fair,
Definitely.
I'm gonna leave that one to these guys, because I'm not that familiar with Inspector Spacetime. I know it exists, and I know it's got a big history here at Gallifrey.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that I've never really explored.
It's clearly meant to be a Doctor Who parody, so much so that it kind of got a life of its own. And the actor who plays Inspector Spacetime actually
Travis.
comes to this convention and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So it's also interesting that Matt, I can't think of his name, who played Nardole.
Matt Lucas.
Matt Lucas is in one of the episodes in which they go to a science fiction convention and they meet Inspector Spacetime, and of course, he then ended up as a companion on the actual series of Doctor Who, which brings it even closer together.
I mean, mentioning Matt is interesting because you'll find also a thread of you go through a lot of these comic sketches and you'll see people, and then it's like, hang on, I know you, and it's like they've later on ended up in Doctor Who, because Matt Lucas played a character called George Dawes on a comedy panel show called Shooting Stars with Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer, and they did a sketch. Well, I say a sketch. It was just a very brief cutaway where they all played. They were the Who. but they were the first 4 Doctors. So George Dawes was like the second Doctor on the drums. Which was brilliant. And Mark Gatiss, obviously, big long-term fan. Getting a lot of Doctor Who stuff into the League of Gentlemen, including the trip down Wookiee Hole, where he's talking about the recording of Doctor Who back in the 1970s.
And another thing that's important to bring up too is so many comedians have ended up in Doctor Who itself, right?
Yes.
So usually playing straight roles, right? I think of like Beryl Reid or Alexei Sayle or whoever played the Absorbulov. I can't think of what his name is.
Joshua, do you want to get a name in here?
Yep.
Your mate? Rufus Hound, yeah. Rufus Hound, yeah.
Yeah, so there's always been that close connection. And I think Doctor Who fans in general, what's so wonderful about Doctor Who as a television program all around is that it's a show that has never taken itself too serious, because I think from the very beginning, the production team as well as the actors knew that life can be funny. You know what I mean? So there's a great element of humor that's in the series to begin with, and that just lends itself to great crossover material.
Yeah, the thing you got to be careful of when doing comedy is you sometimes you've just got to play it straight and let the comedy speak for itself, rather than "Badum, chuk, that's a zinger line." As much as I love show, I mean, the number of times they got Doctor Who references into The Big Bang Theory, so happy with that. I love The Big Bang Theory, but that's not the sort of comedy I'm talking about, because that is the sort of get a zinger line in every other
geek joke.
Yeah.
Geek joke. Kind of ableist joke. Yeah. Right.
So
You had mentioned Mark Gatiss. On one of the Doctor Who DVDs, they put in there a sketch he did in which he's a fan and he ends up kidnapping Peter Davison.
Yeah, these were
so good. Yes, those were my favorite.
Those were done for the Doctor Who night on BBC Two back in 1999. So there's the 3 of them. There's the kidnappers, which you've mentioned. And
isn't there one with
there's the Web of Caves.
That's what it is.
The Web of Caves, and then there's the one about the origin of Doctor Who, which has now been edited because one of the lines kind of upset.
Any old F will do.
Yeah.
Oh, I still love that line though.
Yeah.
That's kind of I hate it because it's like, but McCoy's my favorite.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like it's funny. That one's wonderful. If you ever see it, it's basically David Williams as Sidney Newman, right? And he's pitching Doctor Who to Mark Gatiss as head of the BBC, Lord something Barry, I don't know. Who's just kicked out Muffin the Mule, I think. Like, yes, Muffin, I'm sorry too. And Muffin's going away to jail. It's just been fired, brings it Sidney Newman. Pitches the whole idea for this show, and I'm not going to spoil anything else because it's so good. But it's just
it is.
It's on the DVDs.
Yeah,
definitely.
Think of the beginning box set, I think.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, it is out there, either officially or unofficially, if you want to go looking for it. So we do absolutely recommend it. We got a question.
Another one over
here.
here.
Shout out to 2 things that I really like. One is in the David Tennant era, a group of fans put together a nice song with a great choreography to "Let's Do the Time War Again."
Yeah.
The Hillywood Show.
Yes.
Yes.
It's just brilliant, and the effort they put into it to get all these people together and do this elaborate choreography on stage to this song. And the other one is, and I don't know much about British humor, so I don't know who did it, but I've seen a brief segment of a sketch that looks hilarious, and it was about a housewife, and she's cooking dinner or ironing, and her husband comes home, and her husband is a dog.
Okay, so right,
Spike
Milligan, Q6,
Yes.
the Pakistani Dalek sketch.
Yeah.
Now that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about there are certain sketches that you kind of watch and you kind of think, no, that is just so wrong.
Well, given the time it was made, 75.
Yeah.
But
Why is
with
it called Pakistani Dalek?
Because he's a Pakistani. The idea is so that the caption at the beginning, the caption at the beginning of the sketch is a typical evening in a British Pakistani household, and the Pakistani member of the household just happens to also be a Dalek. For no apparent reason other than it's Spike Milligan, who was a genius, but...
We have another question over here. Randy, go ahead.
So, although I wasn't there, I imagine that the Dave Allen sketch was the funniest thing ever. I have to imagine at the time, Doctor was in the kind of the public zeitgeist, and he's done so many Vicar sketches that all of a sudden, the Vicar and the Dalek and such just, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's for those who don't know in the audience, there's a Dave Allen sketch. Dave Allen at Large was a very popular television show. It ran on PBS in the United States, so this is another one of those crossovers where a lot of Americans got to know Doctor Who, because depending on where you lived, that tended to run before or after Doctor Who itself. And in that episode, in that sketch, Dave Allen is a vicar in his church, and all of a sudden his baptismal fountain comes to life and starts going exterminate, and chases them out of the church, basically.
The vicar is, he jumps behind his lectern.
Oh, that's what. Yep.
And
And it's
the lectern
dematerialized. Yep,
is
I
a
forgot about
TARDIS.
that.
Yeah,
That's right,
I
yep.
literally, I said, I did a lot of research
That's
for this, and that was on my list that I rewatched.
I want to actually. So I'm a lifelong Doctor Who fan who's worked at PBS for most of his adult life. Loves Doctor Who parodies, British humor, and making fun of the clergy. And I've never heard of this.
Really?
I need to leave. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I can sort you out, mate. I can sort you out.
Fantastic. All right.
But we've talked a bit about printed stuff, but there's one sort of aspect I do want to raise while we've got the chance, and that's comedy comic strips. I remember John Pertwee saying that they used to say that they knew they'd made it when they ended up in a General de Gaulle as a Dalek in a political sketch. Especially in fandom, but Doctor Who magazine has always had a history of comic sketches. So when I first became a fan, so this was like the late 80s, that was Tim Quinn and Dickie Howitt's Doctor Who ? But the ones that always stick out to me, and they only did like 4 or 5 of them. There was a couple of guys they called themselves the Comic Assassins, Kev F and Stanton. Kev S. Sutherland is still around. He's a comedian. The Falsetto Sock Puppet Theatre.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah. And basically they would do a one-page black and white comedy skit about whatever that month's video release was. My favourite gag ever is from the 5 Doctors. So it's like you get to the bit where the first Doctor and Tegan are trying to get across the chessboard.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And Tegan goes, "How long are you going to play pitch and toss?" And the first Doctor replies back, "Patience, child." And Tegan replies, "No, it's definitely pitch and toss." It still works. You can find it online.
Yeah, that's so good. Wasn't it the Scottish falsetto?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
I have no original ideas.
Heavy
I steal
accent.
that one too. That's good. As a new series I start and never do anything with. I'm going to do that. That's fun.
Did anybody else have any questions in the audience at the moment? Down at the front.
Not so much a parody, but but it's also very Gallifrey is when Peter Davison made those 2 videos. The one when he didn't show up, and the one when he did.
Yes.
Said he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I think those
sorry.
are those definitely count as Doctor Who.
I've seen them, and I wasn't here for them, but
I was sitting in the front row.
Oh, that's going to have been brilliant.
Both of them.
An experience that I think is worth mentioning, because Gallifrey as a convention used to feature this, but unfortunately is not in the last couple of years, since we've kind of, come back, and that would be Mysterious Theater 337.
Yes.
So which is done every year at Chicago TARDIS.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, it's sort of a take on Mystery Science Theater 3000. So, and the basically the actors who kind of do it pick a Doctor Who episode and then comment on it, lovingly comment on it, and have a lot of fun with it. So I highly recommend. They used to do it here. I hope they do it again here in the future. But if you go to like Chicago TARDIS or some of the other conventions, you will occasionally see a performance of that. It's worth your time. If you're a Doctor Who fan, you'll love it. So like I want to bring that up.
Totally.
I don't know, it's not exactly a parody, but I think it's worth mentioning. Since Peter Davison wrote it, we're talking about him, the Five-ish Doctors reboot.
Oh yes.
That's definitely in the remit.
And himself and his fellow actors. But I think it's worth mentioning.
It's perfect.
Five-ish
Yeah.
Doctors reboot.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So
I've got a couple.
If you have your own parodies, who would you recommend that someone that, like, if I wanted to submit stuff, is there anybody you would recommend that?
are they, like video or written or?
Written and recorded.
If it's recorded, I would put it on YouTube. Again, you're protected in parody by yourself, so I would create your own YouTube channel.
Do it.
Or parodies of operas that I've done.
Oh, cool.
Opera parodies?
Yeah.
Bring that on.
A couple years ago, I put some of my haters here, but I used to do them out in the hallway, kind of guerrilla production.
Were you here 2018?
Yes,
I saw you doing The Marriage of Figaro.
It was, I called it a TARDIS in Seville.
Yeah, that's it. I do recall.
And I still have ribbons if anybody wants them that say, Valiano Dalek Extermina.
Yeah, you mate. Listen, it is so much easier now than it was, 20 years ago when we were doing this, to make something and give it an audience, because you can go on YouTube, you can put audio podcasts out there, you can just go and do it, and that's what me and my mates on 50 Foot Nerds do. Plug. We literally sit down in front of a live audience and chat like this about whatever, and then we put it on the internet and it somehow finds an audience. So that is exactly the sort of thing you need to do.
I actually submitted to be on this panel, but you guys, I'm not worthy. Sorry.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
You're too kind.
We're glad you said something. That's awesome.
Totally. Yeah. No, put that stuff out there.
And some, only because I was kind of creating a flyer hazard, and I resent, and I have remorse for doing that, and I've come to peace with those.
It is a highlight of my last visit here. I saw you doing it, and you did it on the karaoke night as well. So
on Papageno from Magic Blue.
So cool.
By what do you call it? By Patrick Troughton with his recorder.
Yeah. Oh my God.
We have 2 minutes. I think we should.
2 minutes. A few more minutes than that. I mean, don't we get done at 5 till?
We'll do 2 more and then we'll do a wrap up. So
okay, there's a couple more references.
You've got a couple
make.
more you want to do.
These are available on DVD. I think the Trial of a Time Lord box set. There was a comedy sketch done by French and Saunders. It was never broadcast, but it was put on the DVD. It's called The Silurian Disruption, and it's on the Trial of a Time Lord trial set.
That was again, that was one of the ones that they put on the Curse of Fatal Death VHS.
Right.
So that was where that was originally released.
And there's another skit called Doctor Who versus Crayola.
Yeah, so from Victoria Wood as seen on TV.
Yes.
Who am I thinking of? Who was the Doctor in that? It was
Jim Broadbent?
Yes, it was Jim Broadbent.
Yeah.
So a future Curse of Fatal Death Doctor.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, going back to Curse of Fatal Death and things that, Richard E. Grant.
Yep.
Being the Doctor before he was the Doctor who wasn't the Doctor in Scream of the Shouka. These things just go round and round and round, and it all comes back to Doctor Who, and we absolutely love it.
Absolutely.
Couple more? Okay, these are references of Doctor Who stateside shows. Mm-hmm. There have been many references in The Simpsons.
Of course.
Where the Fourth Doctor is a representative of the highly esteemed pantheon of television.
Yeah.
We
One of
mentioned
the
Inspector Space Time.
slideshow, Bob.
Okay. My Little Pony. Gotta mention Dr. Hooves.
Spot the bronies.
Yes. Gotta mention that. There's some clips on YouTube. Plus, I don't know if you're familiar with Milo Murphy's Law. It was on Disney. It was voiced by Weird Al. There was a series within a series, The Dr. Zone Files. So that too was basically a take on Doctor Who. And there's also, we normally would have capped this off with the top 10 Doctor Who parodies. Find it on YouTube.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time. We've got 5 minutes. So how do we sum up 60 years of Doctor Who parody in 5 minutes? Start at this.
I'm going to start with, and I kind of made a joke about this halfway through, but I'm going to say do it. Okay, if those of you are in this room because you like Weird Al Yankovic or because you like making your own movies or shows or music or whatever, or writing something funny or making an opera, please do it, because I can guarantee you that the other 102 people in this room are going to enjoy it, okay? So make it and share it, put it on YouTube, and please do it so that we can benefit. Okay?
Yes. Make funny art.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Well, I would say this. Hang on a sec here. It's a god-awful long affair for the doc with the fashion flair and his faithful assistant Joe. He's reversing the neutron flow and the master is hatched to ski and the monsters are always queen and the devil is running wild and Sergeant Fenton is making tea and he tripped through a carnivore. Hold on.
Forgot the lyrics.
Oh, someone doing so well at my own song. Yes. Autumn smashing up the high street. Oh man, look at those axles glow with dubious DSO. And take a look at those eyelines. It's a different timeline. Oh man, finishing a keto. Oh, it's the John Party show. And he's stuck on Earth. Yeah, because he's stuck on Earth.
Give that man a round of applause.
Right. And you can see the rest of that, including the lyrics I messed up because I got ahead of myself in my brain. Wow. Okay. On Sycorax Rock on YouTube, please subscribe. I have about 1,000 that like more.
And there are more different doctors, and the songs are from the era.
That's true. Yeah, the idea. So different songs, different doctors is the idea. There are 13 songs, 30 doctors. I just posted the one on Jody's last episode of All Too Well, Taylor Swift, a parody. That's her song. Parody, and then before that was Hamilton for the 12th Doctor. It's like a song that's from that era, basically, right? And that sort of sums things up in a cool way. Hopefully you like it. Life on Mars is being censored for Pertwee, and I liked it. You should go see it.
Guys, I genuinely cannot follow that.
I'm sorry.
So we're going to wrap it up there. If people want to engage with you guys further on this or any other subject, where can they find you?
I would say you can find me on the Earthbound Time Lords website online, the Doctor Who Club, and at the Chicago TARDIS Doctor Who Convention.
Yeah.
Facebook.
I
have no podcast. I have nothing. I'm a fan. I know. I need to get with the times.
The Sycorax Rock, the YouTube. Sycorax Rock, as in the modern sense they rock from the Christmas information.
And you can find me on Twitter. I am at Autumn Scouser, because I live on Merseyside, but I'm not actually a Scouser. Plastic Scouser, yeah, it's a thing. And as I mentioned, the 50 Foot Nerds podcast, you can find that online as well. You have been a wonderful audience. I would love to thank Andy, Dan, and Nick. Give them a round of applause.
Yes!
This has been
Thank you, Paul.
Beyond a Joke.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed the nerdom in your ears, then why not follow us on Twitter at 50footnerds. You can follow Mike at Mike G. Bell, Amara at Volsevexoth and at Amara Lunera, and Paul is on at Auton Scouser. Our website is 50footnerds.co.uk. That's FIFTYFOOTNERDS.co.uk. You can find all of our YouTube content at video.50footnerds.co.uk or search youtube.com/50footnerds. All of our episodes are archived over at bit.ly/50footnerdsarchive. That's 50FTNERDS archive. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Attack of the 50-Foot Nerds. Email us at 50footnerds@gmail.com or join our Patreon at patreon.com/50footnerds. If you'd like to buy our merchandise, you can visit us over at tinyurl.com/50footstore. That's 50FT store. All of these links and more are available at our Linktree page. That's linktr.ee/50footnerds. FIFTYFOOTNERDS.
Good panel, you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well done.
And no